everything that I do that's different now. And these are some of the things that came up. Typical product management thing of let's brainstorm for a new project, or hey, it's somebody's birthday, or something that's much more complex, like how do I create a sense of urgency when I join a new team that's in a state of crisis? Basically, everything is a little bit or a lot bit different. And it's tricky. It's something where I think, I had always worked on projects that included a remote aspect. That's just the nature of how companies have worked for a while. Most companies are global or aspire to be. A lot of us work with an engineering team that's in another country, or work at a company with offices all over the world. So we're used to doing a lot in that different way, but it's a completely different way to say that your whole job is changing and then everyone's whole job is changing. So first of all, I just want to start by acknowledging this, and you probably have a few things that you would add to the list. You said, okay, these are things I know how to do. And then sometime at this year, you realized, I don't know how to do this, or I feel like I'm not as good at doing this as I thought I was, or I'm not really sure where the goalposts are anymore. How do I know if this is working? And so I think that's the best place to start with all things, is just that kind of recognition and acknowledgement, both that things have changed and then specifically what it is that's different. And when I was in one of the breakout sessions, someone mentioned that they had come to a previous talk that I gave for Products That Count, and it was about improv comedy. And I walked all around the room, making eye contact with all the different people and laughing and talking. And now I'm so glad that Zoom allows me to see a couple faces on the side, because otherwise it'd be like talking to a black hole. And it's really brought me a lot of sympathy for people who are, let's say, a TV presenter, and all you see is that teleprompter, and you have to look excited and concerned as the text scrolls by on the screen. It's just very different. It's different how we get our energy. It's different how we communicate. That's one of the biggest things that's changed. And I work at Slack. We spend a lot of time talking about how people do work and how we can help people do work better, because that's the nature of our business. And so that's something that's very important to us as a company. And one thing that we noticed during the change, and I think this is not exclusive to Slack, is that as all of this change has happened, a lot of the burden has fallen on product managers and on managers in general. And I think that there are a lot of reasons for this that we should just talk about and acknowledge. One of them is, if you're a product manager or any sort of manager, but I think product manager specifically, your whole job is about collaboration. And I think collaboration is the thing that's changed the most. If your job is writing code and checking it in without bugs, sure, maybe you can't do a whiteboarding session with somebody, pair programming gets a little bit trickier, but a lot of it is an individual contributor activity that you do with your computer, and your computer is mostly the same. But if you're all about collaboration, that's something that's going to be really different unless you're one of those product managers who's been working at home for a long time. Secondly, I think that for a lot of people who work in product, one of the reasons that we're a product manager and not an engineer or not a business analyst or someone in finance is that we actually like people. And whether we're introverted or extroverted, we actually get a lot of our satisfaction about the relationships with people. And as someone on my team put it, it just feels a lot more transactional. This person said that she could get her job done, but you just didn't get that sense of connection with people. And so I think for a lot of us who are product managers, we feel that loss because that's something that's really important to our jobs, and also we're just getting less of right now. And then finally, one of the most important things that a product manager has to do is to lead without authority. How do you get authority? Well, you need to get buy-in from people. How do you know when you're getting buy-in with people? It's a little bit harder to do in a Slack chat. It's a little bit hard to do on a VC screen. So that's something that's a real challenge. And so I just want to recognize for all of you, if you're feeling like this has been a particularly hard year for you to know if you're really making progress on your project or making a contribution to your team, you're not alone. And it's probably not just you. There's certainly things you could probably learn how to do better. I think we all are realizing that. But also, let's work together and figure out what's going on and what we can do about it. I also want to give a shout out to the caregivers in the audience. For those of you who are parents or have other types of caregiving roles, there's been a completely tactical challenge thrown up this year that's different than anything else. If you were watching your young child at home with no childcare by yourself, there's only so much you can do to be, psych yourself up and feel resilient. I have a toddler at home, and on days when her nanny has to call in sick, like that's just going to be a really rough day, and I'm not going to be as productive. And I just want to acknowledge that for a lot of people who are dealing with a situation like that, or maybe illness or loss or unemployment, either for themselves or someone in their family, this is just a really hard year. So there's a lot of things that we can do, that we can control, that we'll talk about in a little bit. But I also just want to acknowledge that this year there's been a lot of stuff that those of us can't control, and that's just really hard. So what I decided to do when I was going to work on this talk was to do a little bit more research. We all want to be resilient, but some of us have kind of felt some gloomy times throughout this year. So let's see what psychology has to say to us. So I did some research, and they've done a lot of experiments over the years with humans, with animals, etc., over the past 100 years about a phenomenon that maybe you've noticed. They've seen that some people, let's say you have two people and they're thrust into the same situation, some of them are going to come out of it with feeling much more empowered than others. They've seen in some of the research too that the specific things that seems to be the most discouraging, both to people and animals, is to put them in a negative situation where those people or subjects don't feel like they have any control about the situation. And I think that's how the year has felt to a lot of us. It's just bad things keep happening, and there's not a lot that we can do to prevent it. So what a lot of the research does say is let's understand what those people who are able to be more resilient are doing differently. And there's a whole field out there called positive psychology that talks about basically the mindset of those people who, even if they were in just as bad of a situation that seemed as uncontrollable as someone else's, they were able to keep going and not get discouraged. And it looks like what they were able to do was to look at any type of setback as temporary, localized, and changeable. Like maybe what's happening right now is bad, but it's not going to last forever. Or it's only in one part of my life, there's other good things going on. Or this is going to improve for some reason, and maybe I can help contribute to that. So let's dig a little bit more into what else the researchers have learned about that and how we might be able to apply this to ourselves. There is a resilience researcher named Lucy Hone in New Zealand. And this was what she found were the three things that seem to be in common with the people who are the most resilient. One was that they accept the suffering. They don't try to argue with it, and they look at it and they say, this is happening. This is something that's bad. But also suffering is part of the human experience. And so even as painful and horrible as this may be, and she actually talks a little bit about some deep suffering she experienced in her own life, and also how it allowed her to connect with others who have experienced suffering, because all of us will. And, I think what one person put it this year was, this year in 2020, we're all in the same storm, even if we're not all in the same boat. And so there are a lot of things here where we can relate to each other, be more human at work about, yeah, things are going to be hard sometimes. The second thing that people did that they felt was really useful in her research was that these people who were able to be more resilient were able to think more about where they apply their attention. Rather than spiraling and thinking everything is terrible and hopeless, these people were able to think about looking at accepting what they cannot change, but then focusing on what they can change. What are those things that they can do? Also, what are those good signals? So, okay, not everything is terrible. Maybe we're seeing some improvements. I remember when the pandemic started, some people actually found some good signs that maybe the environment was able to recover a little. Obviously we all want everything to get better, but I think helping to keep that positive mindset can be easier if you're able to look at some good things that are happening. Those of you who are Mr. Rogers fans may remember him saying that his mother used to say, look for the helpers. And any time of great trouble, there are always some people that are contributing and making it better. So if you're having a hard time being able to, stay a little bit positive, this can be something that you focus your mind on as well. It's like, what else is good and what else can I do about it? And then she had a very specific question that she said helped her the most in her own personal story of suffering. And she found it was very helpful for others as well, which was asking yourself this very specific question. Is what I'm thinking or doing right now helping me or harming me? And so that's just like kind of a good tool, she said, is always good to have in your toolbox. So if you're concerned about either something happening in the world, something in your personal life, or things with your team going really downhill, it's a great way to just kind of snap out of it, take a step back and say, okay, do I really need to keep doing this? Or should I just stop this and maybe work on something else that's more likely to have a positive impact? And what's really good about that too is it's putting you back in the driver's seat. You can't control everything that happens to you, but it does give you a sense of control over your own decision making and actions. And having a sense of control is exactly what fights learned helplessness, of feeling like there's nothing I can do to change this current situation. So when I think about resilience, this is a way I've been thinking about it in terms of, myself. So how can I be resilient? How can I help my family and friends be more resilient? And how can I contribute to my broader community? And I think for a lot of us as product managers, we can have a similar framework here. How can I help myself be more resilient at work in terms of what I do and my own personal impact? Secondly, how can I help my team be resilient and able to cope with setbacks and challenges that we didn't expect? And then also, how can I help my product and my company evolve as the year unfolds? And you can ask yourself some questions like this, maybe, what is reasonably within your control? What can I do to give myself a greater sense of control? And then also back to Lucy's research, is doing X helping or hurting me, my team, or my product? And we talked a little bit about mentoring in the opener. And I think that's something that we can apply this not only to ourselves, but also potentially to people that we're managing or mentoring. I know also as product managers and some of the social connectors on the team, a lot of us may have people confiding in us that they're having a hard time or not feeling as satisfied with work. And that these can be additional tools as well to try to look at how you can help other people feel less stuck and hopefully have that positive impact that radiates out from yourself to your team and to your product and company. So let's use that feedback to that framework there of yourself, your team, and your product to think a little bit more about how we can be more resilient. So I think the first thing always has to start with the facts. What challenges are we facing as product managers? We talked a little bit earlier how product managers are definitely facing a lot more struggles, I think, than people in some other roles. And, there's a lot behind that. One of them is that our home and work lives are merging. Everything that we do, we have to do differently. And so I think a few themes that have come up a lot is how do people take care of themselves physically and mentally? We had a lot of routines that changed. I know one thing we noticed on our team was that there were some people who were overwhelmed with a large number of family members who were no longer in school or work, all at home, sharing a small space. We also had other people on the other side of the spectrum who were very lonely because they lived alone and work was their main source of social interaction, and that was all online. So finding a routine that works for you to make sure you're taking care of yourself can be really helpful. And then I think finally, also, one thing that gets talked about a lot in terms of how to help people cope with the situation has been around kind of, I guess you could say, letting it go, giving everyone the benefit of the doubt. But I think the other part that doesn't get talked about enough is how to give work more meaning. Right now, work is looming much larger than it used to. It used to be, people could have a vibrant social life and lots of extracurricular activities and all the other things that help, and lots of contacts with friends and family and all those things that give our lives a lot of color and flavor. It's a lot harder to do that. And so a lot more of our attention and interaction right now is focused on work. So I think the more that you can help bring meaning to your own work and that of your team can be really helpful. And also especially to show that as these big challenges come up that the world faces, how is your team and your product able to contribute to that in some smaller way? And I think that can be meaningful to people. And I think also even in your own work, figuring out what work do you find most meaningful, especially if you're going through a hard time at work. Maybe it's just like a week where a lot of bad stuff has happened or you're just not feeling as motivated. Like focus on the work that excites you, whatever that might be. For some people, that might be like doing a deep dive and digging into the most technical, hairy challenges in the products that you're working with. For others, that might be connecting with other teammates, reaching out, doing some one-on-ones with people you haven't seen in a while. And for still others, that might be something else like connecting with customers and the meaning behind why you do what you do. Another thing, so the next aspect, the next little concentric circle there is the team. We talked about how to make the work feel meaningful for you, but you can also extend that then to your team. And I think as product managers, we get unique visibility into why we're doing what we're doing. A lot of functions just focus on I do X, but product usually focuses on why are we all contributing to do X together. So the more that you can help tell a great story with your team can help them all feel more connected and more purposeful in their work, which can be important. Additionally, we've all had, and this is probably something we can talk about in the chat after, as each team has developed different and better ways of working, I think that we're going to hopefully see some improvements in how things are working. And even if we were all back in an office again someday together, we may not want to keep all of those old habits. We may want to keep some of the new ones. So like use this also as a chance to learn and get tips from others and just adopt new processes. At Slack now, we're talking about how Slack, the product, is our new corporate headquarters. So what does that mean? What do we need to do on Slack? What does Slack need to support in order for us to feel like it's doing all the same things for us that headquarters did? Another really important thing is how to help the team feel connected. That team lunch where everyone used to go out for sandwiches on Friday, that's not really happening in the same way. The holidays are coming up. There were a lot of rituals around holiday parties or gift giving or other things like that. Like those things have to be changed. And it's just so much more important now to figure out how to do those things. And then also, like, again, because so much more is happening online, how do you lean into new tools and processes that could actually be better? One thing I found hasn't really found a great equivalent right now is whiteboarding, So I know there's a lot of tools out there. I'm excited to try to find one that actually does a great job of that. There's some that are more organized that are okay. There's some ones that have cool virtual Post-its. Those are all kind of getting there. How do we adapt those new processes and tools so people actually feel like it's moving forward? And I think this is a great place for PM to exchange tips. And then finally, I wanted to talk about just a couple of interesting stories from a few different products of how they have managed to be successful this year, because this has been a tough year with a lot of change. The first one is Color Genomics. So they just got some new funding at the beginning of the year. And what they used to offer as their only product offering was basically a way to look at your health risks based on your genetic information. And that was great. And they developed some exciting technology to, sequence your DNA and screen you and all that sort of thing. And then COVID happened. And then they realized we can also test for COVID with this technology. So they've actually become the biggest provider of COVID testing, usually available within 24 to 48 hours in the entire Bay Area. And it's been really interesting to see how their company has really leaned in heavily to fulfilling that purpose, and also then seeing what other offshoots they can have to help serve other health needs with that technology that they've already developed. So this has been exciting. Out of all of the mess this year, they actually found a brand new business area that they can contribute to. So great for their business, but then also potentially great for just the health of their community, the world, etc. So that's exciting. So if your company is able to kind of identify a new need now, that can be exciting, and being able to move and execute successfully there can be a great sign. At Slack, what we ended up doing when it happened was, we have a tool that facilitates remote collaboration. And so it was like, how do we do that? And how to make sure that we just keep doing what we're doing, but do it better. And then also use it as a great opportunity to smooth any of the rough edges in our product that we hadn't managed to get fixed. And especially what we saw at the beginning of the stay-at-home time was that a whole bunch of people who'd never tried Slack before were trying it. And that was really exciting. And we just wanted to make sure that we're really doing the best for those customers and just continuing to do a better and better job of helping those people get established. And then finally, another interesting story was the Square use case. So Square does a whole bunch of different things. You may recognize them from, that little Square dongle that's used to swipe your credit card. What they ended up doing was facilitating, since so many of their customers are small businesses all over the world, they helped facilitate those people transition from an in-person world to an online world. And that's a transition that was happening already, but if people couldn't go to stores because there was a stay-at-home order, well, those local businesses were really hurting and really needed the help and wanted to move ahead. They also looked for interesting opportunities just to try to create continuity, opportunities, and support for all of the different things that their customers needed. And so I think if you understand your customer needs deeply, then you're able to make rapid change. You can really do a lot to support those customers, and then they're going to get a lot out of it, and they'll be loyal since you were able to help them through such a challenging time. So those are just 3 different strategies that different companies have employed to go from this year of difficulty and catastrophe to actually some new opportunities and a chance to make a lot of progress and add meaning to communities. So I don't know about all of you, but the last time I went to an office to work was March 5th, 2020. And that was 8.5 months ago. I actually had to go and look that up. And it's a long time. I kept telling myself it was 6 months ago, but it's not. And then I remember we had a chance to go in and clean out our desk. And I, wasn't sure what to take home. So I just decided to take everything. I said, when are we going to be back? I thought it was going to be like 3 months, but figured I didn't want to, realize that one of my favorite pencils was missing. So this is our new normal. And I think the more that we've been able to embrace that it is the new normal and not something that's going to go away in a week or a month, it actually helps with our adjustment. I've seen a lot of people make interesting changes where they've moved location, moved where they live, or made other significant changes to make sure that they are kind of embracing and getting the most out of where things have to be right now. If this is going to go on for a long time, how do I make sure I'm in a great spot? Is that buying an exercise bike? Is that moving to a different apartment with a better view out the window? Like, what are those optimizations that I can make that are going to make it this time more productive, more pleasant, more fruitful, and even an interesting opportunity? I've even heard of some people going and living in a beautiful tropical place for the next year so that they're, which is an opportunity they might not have been able to embrace. So that's, I think, something else to just look at is like, this is going to be a long-term thing. But lately, we've been getting some really interesting, positive, good news. There have been some great developments around vaccines, and that sounds amazing. So go science. That's cool. So part of me has been wondering, well, how much is going to go back to how it was and how much won't? I think in general, product managers have been pretty lucky because most of us work at companies that have a lot of tech. We all do most of our work on laptops. The transition to working at home is probably not as hard as it was if you were, let's say, a school teacher or something like that. But even still, like, are we going to go back to how things were? So my personal hypothesis is that there's going to be another new normal. We're not going to go back to things exactly as they were 8.5 months ago. There's been a lot of experiments by a lot of these tech companies to try different things that they wouldn't have tried before. Things like hiring employees that don't live near an office that your company has, or allowing people to work remotely for long periods of time, or other changes. And when you see surveys of tech workers, most of them say, I don't expect and I don't want to go back to working in an office 5 days a week. So all of these new habits that we're learning now, we're probably going to have to carry a lot of them forward. So it's good to just look at this as more of a permanent change rather than a temporary compensation. Like, oh, if we just learn how to do remote planning for this one more cycle, then we can ignore it. I think we're going to be dealing with a lot more of these challenges. One thing also that's been interesting has been talking to a few people who are different Slack offices outside of headquarters. And they actually said this has been really good for me because it used to be that I was the only one on video conference, and now everybody is. And everyone has to, talk in the chat and write docs and review them and do other things that make it feel like everyone's on the same page. It'll be interesting to see what happens when some people start going back into the office together, because I'm sure that that will happen at some point. I don't think this is going to be the permanent way of things, but there will be something new that's a little bit different. But I'll be curious to see how many people go back into an office, which office, how often. Does business travel resume? Will we all be meeting in person at giant conferences again? Who knows? I think it'll be interesting. So I think the more that we can look at this as something where we need to learn a lot, both around how we can make this fun and healthy and productive for ourselves, how our teams can feel connected and productive, and also how we can deliver the right products that reflect the world as it is and how it will be in the future, that's going to do a lot. So I think as product managers, what we do best is identifying and solving problems. And so here's to doing more of that over the next year. So that's it for me. And I'd like to open it up for Q&A now.
Cheers, Ellie. Thank you so much for that presentation. That was wonderful. If anybody wants to pop in some questions in the chat, or feel free to just open up your audio and video and join in the discussion. I see we already have a few recommendations for whiteboarding in the chat. We always love a good recommendation for tools. Or
Yeah, what
Ellie,
else? I'd love to hear that. Maybe that's something we can have as a prompt is like, what is something that your team has tried, either a way of working or not, or a tool or a change that's been helpful? Because I think this is a great time for all of us to exchange tips and get new ideas to try out with our own groups.
I think I have a question about that. We're definitely trying to figure out how to shift from in-person events to virtual events. And, we've had a few different like product tests going on, and it just kind of feels like we're under the gun. Like we need to like quickly adopt new tools and systems for events. And I don't think that we've found the right one yet, maybe. So if anyone has any recommendations, I would love to hear them.
What type of events?
We have an event for all the people who employ other people. And so it's sort of thought leadership around employment. And we want to be able to host events that have speakers and thought leaders and hiring and like retention and just like 360 employment.
Wow. Does anyone have any ideas? I would think the biggest challenge here is like how to go above the noise. That's something we always worry about is like, oh, we could do X, but it would be yet another video meeting that people have to sit in.
Right.
That's tricky.
Yeah. Yeah. And if tools can help us do that, or if it really doesn't matter about the tool and it more matters about like our presentation or our approach and our speakers, like the way that we broadcast the availability of the thing, maybe those things are more important than the platform. But I tend to feel that the friction-free experience of just signing into a virtual event and like knowing what's going on, knowing all of the different rooms that you could be in if you wanted, those features would be so important.
I know there's one company out there. I had a colleague that recently had a large industry scale event that built out some fun booths. They were digital booths that you could join in and you'd pop in. I will try to figure out the name. If I do, I'll pop it in the chat.
Okay, thank you. That's probably a good keyword tip I can search on at least.
Yeah, virtual booths. I think that might be something that people are starting to play with in the event space virtually. And it was a very cool feature that you could join in. You'd have somebody that manned the booth for a while, and you actually had a virtual, just like I have a virtual living room, they had a virtual thing that was built out on scale. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
I think, so there was a Miva conference not that long ago. I don't know if you guys know what that is. It's the e-commerce platform. But they used Boombara. I think that's how you say it, Boombara. I can write it in there, but that's supposedly what they used, and it worked pretty well. I wasn't there though.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question with you all. How do we build rapport now that we can be shut on and shut off? Like even with my team, sometimes I feel even having everyone turn on their camera is a difficult thing to do because of all the noise, inside their home around them. I wonder how we can make it so that we feel that our team members feel like less expendable, let's say, or how our communication can feel less like transactional. It's hard. It's been hard.
I found that when meetings are smaller, like we do a group meeting of like 8 people, 10 people, pretty much everyone keeps their camera on because you work. These are the people you work very closely with, and it would be noticed if someone was like completely checked out. I think as the meetings get bigger and bigger, I think people feel less responsibility that the focus is going to be on them, or someone's going to notice that that they're not present for some period of time. That's what I found, at least. Like as the meetings get larger and the invite list gets longer, you kind of get less sense of like responsibility to be there for the whole thing.
It's, there's something that is also, I guess, a bit of an adjustment is the, the traditional thought that when someone is not on camera, that they're not engaged, or, the other way around. And it's a hard situation to go into, and to build that rapport with somebody over, just a camera. The small group has always generally worked pretty well. Something that has helped us a lot that we do, and this is connecting back to Ellie's request for some suggestions, is going on a Google Jamboard and using sticky notes as part of a collab session. We try to keep our sessions as collaborative as possible in that sense, so that it doesn't matter whether you're on a screen or you're not. You're able to interact in different levels, and I think that's the biggest. I guess that's one big value add. Another question, Naomi, regarding the event that your company is organizing. Is this for your team? Is this for people within the same company working together, or is this externally for potential, let's say, vendors or clients?
It's external and it's global.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I was just thinking of, and I don't think it would relate for a larger audience, but one aspect, one survey result insight that came back for us was that people were just missing that general connection. Every time you interact with people, we already have Zoom fatigue, but every time we interact with people over the camera, it's for a specific purpose. This is the meeting, this is what we're doing. It's harder to just hang out with the people I used to hang out with at work for drinks or for dinner, or just go for a walk. And so during some of our larger sessions across our studio, which is approximately 30 people, we'll break down into smaller groups, but we tend to do little like trivia activities. Like for example, try to take a picture of this in your place, or like try to do this and the first team that gets it, so to speak, right? So just adding that personal touch that is nothing to do with work to just, break down those barriers. That's generally good as well, of course, if you can afford it with the time. But those are some things that we've tried in different circumstances that have worked well.
Those are good goals. I think that's the sort of defining, I get like the vision would define like what you really end up choosing is for a tool, right? And so for me in marketing tech, it's hard if like everybody's struggling to have energy about this and we're like, we're doing a global event virtually. What experiences are worth reproducing in a virtual way? And so thanks for sharing those ideas. That's pretty good inspiration.
Yeah, I really think that networking at conferences is something that's been hard to replicate. I recently went to if anyone's been to the Women in Product conference, and they used a couple tools that tried, and I think like they didn't totally meet the mark, but I appreciated that they were trying. Because usually it's like you're walking out in the hallway and you run into someone you know, and they're like, "Oh, hi, Ellie," and you're like, "Oh, I remember you from 5 years ago." And then they're like, "Hey, here's my friend, you should meet them." And you're like, how do you replicate that in tech? Maybe there's some better tools for that, for organizing conferences. I bet there's going to be some successful companies in the space a year from now.
Probably. I think that's a really good point too. It's that surprise and delight situation of a conference is a hard thing, but at the same time, I like that you call out, if you fail, at least you're trying. And I think that's a bit of humor in some ways that everybody has about this moment. And so,
We're all trying and failing a little bit, sometimes succeeding.
yeah.
I know that technology is not totally mainstream yet, and folks don't have the hardware, but VR has been great for our team. We kind of did a little social peer pressure, and everyone in our like 8-person team got like the new Quest 2 headset, and we've done a couple like happy hour sessions in a VR game, and it's a lot better than being in a video conference. I mean, there's a presence there. It doesn't necessarily look like them, but you kind of have this feeling that you're in the same space with someone that you have seen in real life. It's obviously doesn't totally scale to a global conference, but if folks have that, it's worth trying that out. And then you can even do meetings and things like that in some of them. The tech still has a ways to go in terms of being able like to use virtual whiteboards and stuff. But I feel like on the social side, there's a few experiences you could do there to feel connected to the people you work with.
Done the same thing on my team a little bit too. At least like 4 of us going out in VR.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I
That
mean,
sounds
video
exciting.
games, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the gamer community.
Yeah, they're always looking for a way.
We have a whole Discord going. Just all the gamers in the business. I'm kind of touching on that and Zoom and all that stuff. I have a personal struggle with Zoom fatigue and being on meetings consistently day after day. Do you guys have any, like, how do you guys deal with that? How do you deal with that in your teams? Because I haven't come across like some solid advice about how to deal with getting Zoom fatigue.
I'll tell you a couple of things that we've tried. We've tried having no recurring meeting hours that are set aside as work blocks in the morning, like 8 to 11, where we're not supposed to schedule. So then at least you get, we call it maker time. And the idea is that you can actually do work, not just be asked by other people how your work's going. I'll also tell you my husband's strategy. He just, to the person who says walking one-on-ones with audio only, he just goes and takes his meetings going for walks in the neighborhood with his video off on his headset. He just decided he doesn't care, but this keeps him from going crazy. And so that's just what he does. I think to someone else's point earlier, though, for me, it's like everyone turns on their video and it's harder being in that 6-person meeting and you're the only one with video off. You know, usually in what I've seen in the culture where I work is if someone's in that state, they'll say something like, oh, sorry, I'm in the car right now, or I'm taking care of my kid right now. And it's kind of this apologetic, I'm not really here thing. But for my husband, he does at least like 3 hours a day of just attending meetings, walking around the neighborhood. So I don't know, maybe that's worth a try, is like resetting expectations for yourself and like letting your team know you're doing an experiment. I think it also depends on whether you have to look at something, you know, like, is there a presentation someone's putting up? Is there code on the screen? Like, do you need to be looking, or is it just really that you can go on the voice and the discussion?
I like that idea of maybe making a one-on-one kind of be that format. You can almost have the person be like a fitness accountability partner too, right? Like getting up off my desk and getting out and actually out of the house. Like there are days where I don't leave the home. So you kind of set that up and be like, our one-on-one on Monday is going to be, we're both going to be walking.
And some people might like that. I think I've tried to do that a couple times and the person will say, hey, I was really hoping we could go through this document. And I'm like, okay, taking off my running shoes, sitting down, getting out the big computer. So, but I mean, like you were saying, if you set it as an expectation, then people know what it's going to be. And maybe you review their document earlier in the day. Hayden said in the chat about starting with a casual organic conversation. What works for you and how do you decide when to cut off the small talk?
I can share something that Products That Count has done that has been really successful. We have a small section and we do break it down by the minute so we stay on track. But it's icebreaker moments, just like we did earlier. And we have it defined for about 5 minutes or a brain teaser. So it gives the opportunity for a nice, easy entry into the meeting mindset. So we're there with each other, but it's not an immediate straight to the heavy stuff. But we know that we have 5 minutes to do that, and then we go and move forward. It's been very effective.
That's cool. And I find that as like the longer this has gone on, the less it feels like wasting time because it's the only kind of connection time the team gets, you know?
And I've heard of other teams that use a weekly team wellness as well. Optional, but it creates a sort of out of office vibe, even if it's still on screen.
I've also done team buildings for my team of just like there's different platforms out there that will literally allow you to drive someone in an escape room. So they put a GoPro in your head and you tell them where to go in the escape room.
Really?
Which is funny, like, yeah. I don't remember the company name. I had done it a while back, but that was an interesting team building.
That actually reminds me of the next question I was going to ask. We've been wondering about this. You know, we haven't done a big kind of team bonding event. We had tried some Zoom cocktail hours. Like, is anyone planning a holiday team get together that's virtual other than watching some guy with a GoPro directing him through an escape through? That could be cool. Maybe that's what we're going to do this year. I'll look into that.
Add that to cocktail hour and it could be very interesting.
Um, we had like a DJ session one day that was really amazing for Pride. And all of the people on the Pride Slack list were like joined, and there wasn't a lot of talk, and it was like it started at like a 3 p.m. on a Friday or something like that, and like it went on for hours, and then at the end somebody shared like yet another link where you could join another Zoom party, and that went on for hours, and so it was a really entertaining moment. And now we have a dedicated Slack channel to it, and people are always trying to figure out how we can get a global sort of DJ party going, but it's been hard to reproduce.
We've actually got an event coming up, and it's virtual wine tasting. It's going to be hosted by a company called In Good Taste. So we're going to have a box of samplers sent over to our place. And then as a group, we're going to be, I guess, being led through the experience. So that's one thing we're going to be looking forward to.
I've heard of that one. That sounds very interesting. I think I've always been a remote worker, and I found that a lot of the time going to coffee shops was obviously a getaway from the office, and just the ambiance of the music and people around kind of mimicked that office environment while still allowing me my own space. Maybe there's a company playlist that could be group added to. So that way you're getting to know people's tastes, and also you have a moment of a company music hour learning about easily people can join in digitally for that.
Cool.
We had a interesting improv night. It was actually hosted by a company called Improv Asylum here in Massachusetts. And so we had a bunch of people online with them, and they would take you through some sketches and coach you on improv. That was super cool, yeah.
It's definitely possible to do improv on the computer remotely. So I'm glad someone's making some cash off that.
Naomi, my colleague, got back to me on the company that they use for building that out. So I'm going to pop that in the chat for you if you wanted to check them out. I don't know much about them, but it might be worth exploring.
Thank you. Oh, I appreciate that. One thing I was going to say when somebody mentioned like a brain teaser or something at the beginning of a meeting was that a lot of the Scrum, like if you search like Scrum ceremonies, like for like a daily stand-up or something, like there's kind of a tradition of like playing little games and stuff. So it's a kind of fruitful search if you want to go look for like those kinds of games via Scrum or Agile.
That's how so during my scrums, what I do is I play music while I'm letting everybody into the room. And we have a couple people that really like to dance, and they also rap. So they'll sit there and dance to the music. So then everyone gets a little bit livelier in the 8 a.m. calls for a scrum.
That's great. I know someone who was doing that, something, just at least the music part for product reviews. So you can take this pretty far. And oh yeah, she also did something where for a recurring team meeting, each week it had a theme. So people would either wear like the costume of that theme or set your virtual background to be something from that theme. And so that was always just something that like both reflected her personality and made it a little bit more entertaining.
The virtual backgrounds has been a nice, easy way to implement. I think that's fun. It's made it more interesting visually.
What else? How have people done about, like, let's say, you've all had people joining your team, joining a new company. What's worked for kind of communicating team and company culture to someone who's new, or has anyone here made a job change remotely?
That's tough. I just got a new, we just got a new director leading our team, and I was trying to explain to him like how awesome it is to show up on your first day and like have, you know, baristas and exciting things and just like people everywhere wearing like company swag, and just to realize like how much is going on. And he was just like, I look forward to that someday. But it's just so hard to reproduce that. Like, I haven't found a way.
Yeah. Guess you can send them a box of swag, but it is tricky.
Yeah.
That's kind of, so my HR department, that's kind of what they've been doing, is sending out gifts. So like we had a coronavirus basket that came in March or April, and now that I know they're doing Thanksgiving, and maybe a little something for Christmas. But like onboarding people has been extremely difficult. We hired probably 8 people since the start of this, which I know is not that many, but for our team it's a lot, and mostly VPs. And it's just been extremely difficult to onboard somebody in a new manner, not have them shadowing people or walking around the office, and trying to make them feel as included as possible.
I don't know what we would do without Slack. I will throw that out there. I literally don't know what we would do.
And a lot of emails.
Yeah. Oh man, don't make me go back to email.
One thing I was talking about with a friend the other day was how we see a lot of our our home things as distractions. Maybe we could repurpose that and share our home life, share family, have a family night with people. So they actually, maybe by being hyper isolated, we make up for that by being a little more hyper personal in the moments that we can.
Or like showing, here's my dog and here's my toddler and
yeah,
here's my spouse or my
making
roommate.
making it more allowed, making it feel more comfortable for those things to happen and share what's behind you.
Yeah.
We do something like that. Fridays, we have a 1 hour check-in, kind of like what folks worked on during the week and any work that they want to share for critique. And we carve out like 10 minutes in that, where each person before the meeting selects an object that they're going to share, something that's meaningful to them, maybe a souvenir they got from some trip, or a photo of a family member, or a book that they're reading that they're really excited about. Just kind of whatever you want to bring to it. And it could be someone in your family, new pet or person. And that's been really nice, because you do get a chance to kind of see the different angle on someone and learn more about them. It's a really nice way for people to kind of express themselves.
That's cool. I think one thing I've been trying to do personally also is like be more open, especially because I am in kind of a management role at the company, like how to be more open about a lot of the challenges that a lot of us are facing, especially working parents. So like my introducing people to my toddler on Zoom calls for days when, you know, we don't have any childcare and things like that. So I think that helps and normalizes, because I think that there's been a lot of shame at times for people who maybe feel like, oh, my attention or my energy or my time is not as available to work as it should be, or I'm not an ideal worker. And so, you know, I think it's helpful to model that and to say, yeah, a lot of us are in that boat, you know, and it's okay. And we're all just doing our best. And, you know, we're not here to grade attendance. We're here to grade performance, and we're here to do our best job. And we all know that we have a lot of different obstacles. And sometimes it's obstacles that you might not even know about, right? Like the working parent case is a case that's pretty clear. There might be other people who have, you know, family in other places that they're supporting in other ways, or, you know, friends that are going through a difficult situation or health situation. So I think that's something that can be, you know, we're just like the stress of politics and, you know, social justice challenges and other things affect some people more strongly than others. So I think this is also one year where it's been important to say to people, like, this is just a hard year to be a person, and it's okay. You don't have to be 100%, you know, ideally productive. And we're all just trying to do our best that we can.
Absolutely. So we have about 7 minutes left on the hour. We usually do a little bit at the end, what we call shout outs. It's a moment for anybody to put out there if you're looking for new opportunities, if your company itself is hiring, anything you may want to just express to the group, introduce yourself. This is a great moment to do that.
Hi, I'm Alex. I work for SendLane, which is an email service provider, and I'm slowly help building what is going to become our product department. So right now we're doing collaborative product. And so with that, what I've been doing over the past 3 months is trying to build up what I'm going to do as I move into that research, right? And so something that I'm looking for, and I will just put it out there, doesn't mean anybody has to take me up on it, but I am looking for some type of mentorship inside of the SaaS product world, because it's something I need to jump into and learn a lot in a short period of time. So somebody to help me guide me on my principles that I'm trying to place down in organization principles. That's, yeah.
I'd be happy to talk to you if you want to connect on LinkedIn. I feel like I've been victim of SaaS like for 15 years or something. But other than that, you know, as somebody who works with Indeed and like knows the jobs platform that we have, and just kind of, you know, I guess is thinking a lot about jobs. So if people are looking for new opportunities or want to know how Indeed works or just want to connect in general, please find me on LinkedIn. I'm very open to connecting and talking.
It's awesome, guys. Alex and Naomi, feel free to pop your LinkedIns in the chat and we can share. Any other final questions or thoughts, Ellie?
Well, I mean, I think for all of us, that's like there's a new year coming. So I think a question that you don't necessarily have to answer here, but may just want to think about for yourself is like, what's one thing that you hope to commit to doing differently, or something that you hope that you can master during this challenging time that's going to make you stronger, more effective, and happier. I also saw an article, I didn't have a chance to read the whole thing, but the headline was like, why didn't tech fix all of this? And so I think it's another question to ask all of ourselves as product managers, as the world has a lot of really big challenges. And I think this year has been a really big reminder. And those challenges aren't necessarily the ones that are easiest to fix with tech, but I really look forward to seeing the next group of startups and other forms of entrepreneurship and new ideas to actually tackle a lot of these really big, hard problems, even the ones that may not have necessarily easy money attached to them. I think with product managers, you know, we all like to solve problems. We love to connect business, technology, and people. And I'm still bullish on technology. I'd love to see how we can help address a lot of the big challenges that the world has. And I think that we have to do that by, you know, staying excited, staying powerful, and also staying thoughtful about what it is that we really came here to do. So I guess that's my final thought.
Well said. I think being thoughtful is a nice theme for everybody to implement for this year moving forward. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. So you know we have webinars nearly every week. We take a break in December, but we have some really great people coming up in the spring. So join us over at Products That Count and check out our webinars and all of our content there. Ellie, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was fantastic.
Thanks for coming. I love the discussion and all of the suggestions. Take care.